Conservative Party Deputy Chairman for Women, Rachel McLean, who was reported to police after calling an aspiring Green MP a man with a wig, has told this channel she will not stop standing up for what she believes because women in this country need someone to speak the truth. Okay, so far, so good. Joining me now, Naomi Cunningham from Sex Matters. It's an extraordinary one, this, Naomi. I think let's just start with what I hope something that everybody would agree on. Nobody wants to be deliberately unkind to anybody. Nobody wants to hurt anybody. But simultaneously, I think we can speak about what we see. We should be able to be factual about things and honest about things. And even if that honesty sometimes challenges some people's perception of reality. Does that sound about right?
That sounds absolutely right to me. Yes. I don't know anyone who, well, on this topic, I certainly don't want to hurt anybody's feelings unnecessarily. I don't work with anybody who does, but it is extraordinarily important that we should be allowed to speak the truth. And if we see somebody who is obviously a man, we must be allowed to say so. And we must be allowed to say so whether or not he's dressed as a woman, whether or not he would prefer to be thought of or seen or treated as a woman. It's important that we are allowed to speak the truth as we see it.
And again, I'm slightly dancing around some of the terminology here, as I'm sure you will understand for obvious reasons. But when I saw that picture, it did look to me like a bloke in a wig. It didn't look like a man who was making a serious attempt to transition to being a woman. I don't imagine, I hope that's not an unkind thing to say. And I do sense with this whole argument, and I've had this discussion with many people in the trans community. Trans people have been among us for years, and we've never debated this stuff. I've been doing phone-in radio for a couple of decades. It never once came up. A Big Brother winner was a trans woman. Nobody cared. It was all fine. And then suddenly, what seems to have happened, we've had a sort of an identity politics thing kicked in, coupled with conventional politics, and people who like kind of messing it all up a bit and going, I choose to identify as X, Y, Z, are somehow allowed to do it with impunity and without anybody criticising them or making a comment on it. And if it gets to the stage where this appears to be, where we are, talking about not the eradication of women, but certainly the compromise of who women are, what women stand for, the backstory of women, which is very crucial, I think, in this discussion, the safety of women, which is incredibly important in this discussion. Surely there's two different things going on here, right? This person claims that they are a woman, but also a proud lesbian. Now, something in my journalistic radar is going off like Billy-O right now, going, hang on a sec. I'm not quite buying all of this. Something about this doesn't sit right, and I might be completely wrong, but am I right to be a little sceptical here?
You're absolutely right to be sceptical. It's preposterous for a man to say that he is a lesbian. It's preposterous. It's also quite abusive and manipulative. And it's quite alarming for lesbians. But I do think it's quite important to make very clear that there is not a substantial distinction between somebody who, as you say, looks like a bloke in a wig, and is indeed a bloke in a wig, and we must be allowed to say that, and somebody who makes a more successful effort to look like and pass as a woman, because no man, however well he passes, can actually be a woman. No man, however well he passes, can actually be a lesbian. And in some ways, it's more frightening if a man makes a serious effort to pass, to the extent that on a trivial interaction, he can fool other people that he is actually a woman. That is quite threatening. If you think about all the situations in which sex really does matter and women's boundaries really do matter, for example, intimate personal care or medical examinations, etc., the possibility of everybody insisting that a man who looks very like a woman and is made up and dressed beautifully to look as if he's female, actually passing and fooling women that he's really a woman, that's actually more insidious and more frightening and more dangerous for women.
I can see that point. I would just introduce Naomi into that. a sort of another aspect in this Venn diagram of what about people who have surgically changed their body? They've gone for the top surgery and the bottom surgery, I think it's referred to. They have certification to say they are now a female. Now, of course, biologically, they're never going to be a woman in that sense. But people who want to lead a quiet life and absolutely feel whatever the psychology behind it is, whatever some argue the biology is behind it, whatever the reason, that is a different discussion almost from some bloke who just sticks a wig on his head and says, I'm a woman, oh, and also a lesbian. They're two different discussions, right?
They're not different to my mind in any very important way. However much surgery, the surgery and the medical treatment that a man has to look more like a woman doesn't make him any more a woman. He remains male in every cell of his body. And the medical treatment that he may have had, so far as I and many others who think like me are concerned, a matter between him and his doctor. Yeah. That's a private medical matter. I don't want to know what any trans-identifying man has had done to his body to make it look in some ways more like a female body. I don't want to know that. It's not my business. I don't want it made my business. And it has no bearing on my right to assert my own boundaries and my right to say that if, for example, I need intimate personal care or intimate medical examination, etc., I want that done by a woman. And when I say a woman, I mean a woman who's female, an adult human female, and nobody else. So I think this tendency to think that there are two kinds of different men who say they're women, men who really try hard and have done all the medical things that you can possibly do to look like women, and men who just pop on a wig and say, I'm a woman and I'm a lesbian, and the two are completely different. I think we need to get away from that idea. The two are only different really in presentation. It's fine for a man who wants to pass as a woman and is prepared to make the effort to pass reasonably convincingly, and it's rarely more than that, it's rarely even that. But it's fine for a man who wants to make all that effort to do so, and for everyone to treat him politely and decently and respect his human rights and everything. And I'm completely on board with all of that, not discriminate against him. But that is provided he respects women's boundaries. And that's the really important bit. Women don't want their intimate spaces or their medical provision, etc., invaded by men who say they're women, even if they've gone to a great deal of effort to look like women. Those two cases are not significantly different.
Okay, Naomi, on that point, we could continue this discussion for much longer, and I'm sure we will do again. Thank you for your time, Naomi Cunningham.